Hello and welcome to the Purpose Pursuit podcast with me, Hannah Miller. Today's episode is one of our Life Lately episodes. If you've not come across one of these before, these are actually very popular with lots of our listeners, where we kind of, without agenda, I just talk about some of the things that have been going on in my coaching, in my work, in my personal life, and the things that I've been learning from that, the things that have been difficult and challenging and stretching, and the good things too. And so this episode is kind of a behind the scenes, no filter conversation around the stuff of life. And the first thing I want to talk about before we get into anything more meaty is flipping cars. We are now months into ongoing sagas with both our cars. And I just want to say, I just need to get off my chest that I am so frustrated with how much life and time I'm spending trying to get our cars sorted. First of all, our lease car, which is an electric car, was off the road for honestly about 3 months because they couldn't work out what was the matter with it. And then the big car, not only did I have that bump in it, which I've already told you about, if you missed that last episode where I bumped into the car, which a person said was so important to it, it was like their child. Not only did that happen, we've had an oil leak that they haven't been able to resolve, and I've had to go back to Volvo main dealership. This is all very boring, I know. But I'm now in a bit of a quandary because the other garage I used, I think probably didn't do it properly. And so how do I go about navigating that with them without it turning into a whole big thing? But it feels like such an utter waste of money. I know you'll empathise. I know most people have got their car stories of when you just think you're just throwing money down an actual drain. And yet what can you do because it's got to be fixed? And so, yeah, the current joy is just feeling like I spend a great deal of my time either on the phone to a garage, driving to a garage, driving back from a garage, speaking to car insurance companies and pestering people to say, please, can I have my car back? Help. I appreciate I'm very lucky to have a car. Anyway, so that is the first thing that's currently on my mind because I've been, again, negotiating around cars. And I suppose the good thing to just say here in terms of the life lesson is, like, stuff happens and there isn't a lot of point in me getting my knickers in a twist about it. You just have to kind of pick yourself up, don't you, and deal with it. There's not a lot of point in me getting bothered about the waste of money because I've got to do it. It's got to be paid for. And just recognise that this is some of the stuff of life, I guess. And wouldn't it be lovely if it didn't feel like we were wasting or making poor decisions? But this is kind of the way it goes. And also, I have zero control over it and zero expertise. So on that basis, we have to just deal with it. So, yeah, that is my first little mini rant that I would like to get off my chest. What has been going on in life? Let me think. I've made a few little notes. There's no real order to these things. What I've been up to? Well, at work, one of the things I've been up to is I got to go to a Women in Leadership conference, like event. It was a panel and discussion around how do we create more spaces and how do we involve women in the most senior levels of leadership. And actually this particular event was looking at the charity sector, but to be honest, it really didn't matter. And we were different. It was put on by a headhunting and HR company, and we were invited guests to be there. And it was really interesting to be in a conversation around this topic and to just hear different people's perspectives on it from across the age range, and also men in leadership and their perspective on this too. I think probably one of my big takeaways from it was that we really only scratched the surface of the conversation, and it was really good to have, but there is so much more that needed to be spoken about. I think there were two things that I particularly reflected on. One was a really good point that was made, that was that we need to listen more carefully to women in leadership, because often when they give their opinion, they might not give it with as much conviction or confidence as a man in a similar position might do. And I don't know whether that's definitely true, but I can definitely see why that could be the case in lots of environments. And I was in a recent situation myself, actually, where I was in a meeting and I gave a suggestion. And it was a suggestion in an area I've got some level of expertise in, but it's not my main area of expertise. And it was quite a big room, actually. There was quite a lot of us in the room, maybe 20 of us in this meeting. And the conversation quickly moved on from my point, which was fine. It was absolutely fine. But then a man in the room, a man I really respect, actually, a really good man, said, can I just go back to that and say, I think this is something we need to think about, i.e. the point that I just made. And I was really glad he did that. Like, there was no part of me that felt undermined. I was really pleased that we went back to the point. But it was a little moment where I thought, maybe I didn't say it with enough conviction and confidence. And also maybe there was something here that there was more weight to it in the way he said it, and more expertise or more trust. Was there a gender part of it? And it was quite funny because a woman sitting on the other side of the room kind of looked at me and winked as if to say, I've just noted this whole interaction. And I don't normally see things like that. I'm not into looking for every possible thing that's to do with gender. And because I'm a woman, I don't think I'm particularly wired that way. But I wonder whether it was one of those moments of, like, if I can say it kindly, a little bit of unconscious bias in the room. Not anything to show disrespect to me or anything intentional, but maybe it was just a moment where actually I didn't say it with enough confidence or clarity. And actually I was just very grateful that somebody else said it too, because it meant that we talked about it. So this whole thing around listening and saying things with confidence and clarity, I thought was a really good point. I think there was another really good point that was made, which I absolutely agree with, is that we've got to not keep talking about what female leadership looks like and male leadership looks like, and drawing like personality lines, that this is male personality and this is female personality. There are definitely, obviously, ways that women can tend to behave or men can tend to behave, but we're doing men and women a total disservice with this, because there will be women who have personality traits which we might expect to see more on their male counterparts, and men who do the same, that we might expect to be more female ways of leading. And I think if we make personality a thing, it really doesn't help anybody. And so that was another learning that I took away from the day. And I totally agreed with the point that the panel were making, that personality comment is just not very helpful for anybody. And I think the final reflection I've got, which is my own, which is possibly a little bit controversial, but I just don't think women can have it all at the same time. And I think we have to make choices. I think we have to decide what we want. I think everyone has to decide what they want. I think there are certain factors that I have to recognise. If I want to be present and be around, I also therefore have to make choices that mean I can't be somewhere else. I think I have to recognise that there is a responsibility that I choose to have in different sections of my life, that I have to take responsibility for my choices. And so I do think women can have anything, like as in you can choose to build a career if that's what you want. You can choose to be at home if that's what you want. But I don't think we can have everything without there being a recognition that we're making choices and that there is compromise. Michelle Obama said something similar, that women can have it all, but not all at the same time. And I think, unfortunately, we've been sold a lie that we can have it all at the same time, and we just can't. Even with the right structures and systems in place, we can't. You can't physically do everything without compromise at the same time. So those are some of my thoughts around the whole women in leadership. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that. Again, I might not have expressed myself as clearly as I'd like to in the way I've just said that. So again, give the benefit of the doubt. If you're listening to this, I don't want to upset anybody, but do give the benefit of the doubt and try and hear the intention and the tone. What else has been going on? Another lovely thing that happened was that I got to see a group of my uni friends that I haven't seen for quite a long time, and to catch up on life and to hear what people were up to and listen to some of the struggles and the joys that have unfolded over the last few years. We've been in touch, but actually it's been longer than I realised since we'd last seen each other, especially me and one of the girls that was in the group. And do you know what? There was just a really lovely thing that when we saw each other and we met halfway, between us all, and we were just having a meal at a restaurant. But when we met on the car park and had a little hug, it was so poignant. It was actually really quite emotional. I can't quite explain why. It was almost like there was this little bit of us that was reconnecting with 19, 20-year-old me and 19, 20-year-old Kate and 19, 20-year-old Han. And it was really emotional. I just felt like there's something that we shared together in that season that only we get. That was that particular point of our life, and that chapter, that iteration of our personality and the things that were going on that only they will understand. And it was just genuinely really precious. On top of that, we just shared some stuff that had been going on in life that just meant, our hearts broke for each other and celebrated with each other. And there's something about people that have walked life with you or know you and just take you as you are that is such a gift. And I just thought we've got to do it again sooner, and got to stop letting just life get in the way all the time. So if they're listening to this episode, thank you for making the time to catch up, because it was a total joy to be with you, and to hear what you've been doing and the wonderful things that you are doing in your lives, and also the things that have been so hard. And it was good to be reacquainted with 20-year-old me, actually, and to be reminded that she's still a part of who I am. So that was another thing that I've been up to. Another moment at the time of recording, this is going out a bit later, but at the time of recording, we are at the halfway point of Jude's travels. And I kind of wanted to reflect on that with you, because if you have been listening to the pod, you'll know that back before Christmas, Jude and I did a podcast episode together where we talked about him moving away for 6 months and how he's going to be traveling and the experiences he's going to have, and what was that going to feel like for us as we navigate this like new season of mother and son as he becomes an adult. And it's been so hard at times. I've really missed him. On Mother's Day, and I opened my card, and obviously it wasn't from him. That was sad. We had a lovely FaceTime though. We did get to speak, but also we've done it. Like I've done a really hard thing. Something that I thought was going to be so hard got easier, and my heart misses him every day, and my heart aches to see him again. But I also have been able to let him go and do this without feeling like I am in a stagnant, I'm just counting down the days till he comes back. Now, between you and me, I have got on my Apple Watch in the top left-hand corner, I have got a little countdown, and it tells me how many days left till he comes home. But which is just my little daily reminder. But honestly, we're doing really well. And if you're listening to this and you can't imagine letting your child go to uni, letting them travel, all of those things that come with older children, you really can. I've got a life that's got so much of wonderful things to be grateful for, and I have to build my life that's not just around my children, as much as they're an integral part of it for me. They need to live their lives and feel free to do that, and I want them to. But I do miss him terribly, and I cannot wait to be reunited. By the time this airs, it won't be that far away, I don't imagine. So yeah, we're at the halfway point. Wonderful. I was walking with a friend in the park. I have a few friends that I walk the dog with over, the different days of the week. And one of my friends was saying how she had been out with some other friends for a walk with their dogs, and how they'd been chatting about something, and afterwards she'd come away and thought, oh my gosh, did I say the right thing? And she was talking to me about this, where she'd been over reminding herself of the conversation and playing the tapes again in her head after the event. And I saw people talking about this whole thing on Instagram, and apparently it's called hangxiety. Now, I read a definition that hangxiety was about thinking about how you've behaved when you've been with friends after the event. Apparently, it's also to do with hangover, and like if you've been out drinking with friends and how you behaved the next day. But if we just take out the alcohol bit and just like use it differently, I wonder whether you are somebody who thinks about the things you've said afterwards. I am not a massive overthinker, but I definitely do this. When I've been in meetings, I'll think about the way I contributed on the way home and think, did I say too much? Did I speak too forcefully? Did I not say enough? Did I say something stupid? Are people talking about the things that I said after the meeting had finished? I think about with friends, did I monopolize the conversation too much? Did they really want to hang out with me? And I think I've realized that lots of people do this, where we think back over social situations or work situations and we replay it. And the reason I'm aware of this is I've got some really fabulous friends, confident, capable friends who have occasionally confided in me that they've been doing this. Or they've even sent me text messages after we've hung out together and said, I feel really silly about that thing I said. And these are like confident, capable, competent women who are thinking about the way they said things. And so I wanted to talk about it on the pod because you might be listening to this thinking you're the only person who does this, when actually whether you're extroverted or introverted or confident or quieter or a thinker or not a thinker, this is quite common. And two things can help. The first thing that can help us with this is to actually talk about it with somebody, because it makes you feel a bit less stupid, especially if it's a safe person. So like my friend talked about it with me and I said, no, don't be silly. There was nothing wrong with what you said. Absolutely fine. And the other thing is to remind yourself that people aren't thinking about you as much as you are thinking that they're thinking about you. And I reminded my friend of that and said, I bet they've not given it a second thought. And sometimes we just need to say it out loud. There's something about doing that makes us feel a bit relieved, a bit less silly. And we realise, oh, other people do this too. This is something that lots of people do. So if you find yourself dissecting a conversation or thinking about what you said in a meeting or all of that kind of stuff, you are absolutely not alone. We all do it, or not all of us, but lots of us do it. And just remind yourself that probably nobody is thinking about you because they're thinking about what they said and worrying about whether they said the right thing too. So let it go. What else has been going on? Oh gosh, feel like there's been loads of things like hanging in the unfinished section of life. You know, if you're anything like me, I love it when like there's a bit of a plan, when things have been boxed off. I can tick that box, yes, resolved, sorted. Tick that box, yes, resolved, sorted. And when you're a parent of older children, you've not only got all the things you want to be ticked off and sorted in your own life, you've got all of the things that you'd like for them. And I don't mean like in an inappropriate, controlling kind of way. I just literally mean that you are interested in the stuff of their life. Maybe they've gone for a new job, or they're thinking about uni, or they're choosing their A-levels, or they are in a relationship that may or may not progress, or all of those things that are going on for them. You've got all of their stuff as well that you're thinking about. And I don't mean necessarily worrying about. You might be a worrier, but you're just invested in it and you want things to work out for them. And just lately, we've been waiting on loads of decisions, both decisions that we've got to make, but also decisions that are being made about things like job opportunities and sixth forms and uni and all sorts of things. And I'm aware that I have not got control over any of those things. And it's been a time where I've been reflecting on that balance between being invested and caring about something, and just realising again how little control I have over so many outcomes in life. And for me, like as a person with a strong faith to my life, that's where I have to like lean into the fact that I believe there is somebody in control, that is not even just another human, that there is a God that is in control of situations. But I think whatever your framework is, there is a recognition that we want control and we want to feel like we are, king of our own destinies. And in reality, we do have agency, but there are so many things we don't have agency over. So many things that are outside of our control. So many things we want sorted and boxed off that life just does not allow us to do. Or they don't turn out how we think they're going to. And I think one of the things that's come with this is a bit of like foreboding joy. Brené Brown talks about that. It's when you're like, there could be something good, but you've got this sense of foreboding. So you're kind of ruining it because you're just thinking it's not going to work out. It doesn't serve purpose for anybody. It doesn't make the disappointment any easier. It doesn't make the joy more full, and it definitely doesn't make the waiting any better. And I think I have fell into the trap of that of late. And the best way I can describe all of this is just feeling like life has got so many, the game whack-a-mole, that you want to whack the moles. I feel like so many moles are up in the air at the moment, and I'm whacking the moles, but they're not even going down. Like in whack-a-mole, normally they go down and then another one pops up over here, so you whack that mole. I feel like more moles are joining the party, but the original moles aren't being whacked. And that can feel really overwhelming, and it just brings me back to this whole, what have I got to let go of? What have I not got control over? How do I learn to sort of be in the moment I'm in? Because that's the only moment that I have. So 2 other thoughts before we sign off for today. One was I saw this really good little pointer on a sort of post. I'm just going to read it to you because I'm going to try and paraphrase it, and I will totally ruin it because that's what I always do when I try and paraphrase things from memory. And it says, someone asked me, if your life were a movie, what would the audience be screaming at the screen telling you to do right now? I just thought that was so good. You know that those moments when you're watching a show and you're like, oh my gosh, don't do it. Don't kiss that man, or don't cross that road, or don't do this. Don't go there again. Don't take that job. And you can feel yourself watching a character doing something that you are watching it play out, and you think, don't do that. I just thought that was such a good question to think about. Like, if somebody was watching my life, what is it that they would be going, don't, Hannah, stop it. I think one of the things is they'd say you need to turn your brain volume down and stop having so much technology that's constantly feeding your brain at the moment. I think that's one thing that I think they'd say. Put it down, step away. I think that's what I'd hear them say to me. There's so many other things. I need to give it some more thought, but I wanted to share that question with you because I thought it was so good. And you might be listening to this whilst you're driving or cleaning. What is it that the audience would be saying, stop, don't do it, or do this, if they were watching your life? Because I think that is such a good question. And I actually think intuitively we know the answer. We know what we're doing that's self-sabotaging or unhelpful or not right. And I thought that was really good to share with you. And I think the last thing in my life lately is probably the biggest one. It's really funny, there's a lot going on at the moment, and I'm not massively emotional about it because you have to just get on. But the minute I'm going to start talking about it now with you, I'm sure I am going to get emotional. We are, at the time of recording, my mother-in-law has days to live. And it's not my story, so I'm not going to go into that because it's not my story to tell. But it isn't an easy time. It's precious in lots and lots of ways, but it's definitely not easy. And I think there's a couple of things that I perhaps want to mention on here. I think one is that when you have a big thing going on, like a big life event, you aren't going to have as much capacity for other things, however brilliant you might think you are. And even if you feel like you've got grace for the season, like some things are just going to be difficult to do. If you are an Olympic athlete and you have a personal best, let's say on a race day, you can't produce personal bests every day. Like, there are training seasons, there are resting seasons, there are injury seasons, there are recuperating seasons. And then there are like the seasons when you get your personal best. And to think I'm going to get a personal best this week is just madness. And so that's one of the things I've been thinking about. How do we adjust our expectations of ourselves when we're having major life events? I think the other thing about this is that you do also manage to dig in hard times. There is grace available for you to keep going, at least for longer than you think you can. I think there's ways to try and take care of yourself and get help and get support and make sure that you feel the love of the people that love you in those times. I think it has exposed my selfishness as well. Major life events can show you who you are. The good stuff, but also some stuff that needs to grow and mature. And I've seen that at times over this period. And I think finally it's reminded me of how much you can love and appreciate someone in the undramatic kindness and care and sacrifice that they show. And as I've watched Sam and his sister Beck, especially those two, because that's who I've had the most contact with, love their mum in this season, it has been precious to watch. And as I look at Sam, he has just demonstrated what it is to care for his mum. And it's not dramatic. Nobody will know. It's just being present, being kind, and choosing to do the thing that's hidden and not glamorous, but most important. And when you watch the movies, those aren't the things that people particularly shout about when they talk about love. And yet they're the best things about a life partner. And so, I think it's just beautiful to have the opportunity to be reminded about what really matters, and who people really are. And I think if you're listening to this pod and you're in our closer friendship, just thank you for being such lovely people. And if you are somebody who's going through a big life event, be kind to yourself. Remember, you can't do personal best every day, and just do what's the kindest thing right now for you in this moment. And there are better days coming. There definitely are. There might be darker days too, but there are better days coming. Thanks for listening.